Hello everyone. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with where you're from and what time it is. That way, YouTube will keep pulling you into stories like this. Now, let the shadows take over. My name's Lily. I'm 24. After a rough breakup with my fiancé, I decided I needed a change of scenery. So, I packed up and headed to a tiny town called Woodbridge, up in Tennessee. It was one of those places where everybody knows everybody's business. Real quiet, real peaceful. The kind of spot you could go to get away from all the noise. I ended up renting this old house on the edge of town, right next to the woods. The place was straight out of a horror movie. Creaky floors, big old windows, and a garden that had clearly been forgotten about. But hey, it was all mine. The first couple of weeks were perfect. I spent my time unpacking, cleaning, and chilling on the porch with a beer. Nothing but the wind rustling through the trees and the occasional owl hooting. Real peaceful. But then, on the third night, things started to get weird. I'd just gotten in bed after a long day, ready to crash when I heard it. A soft whistle. At first, I thought it was the wind, But it wasn't. It was a tune. Slow, off-key, and the kind of song I didn't recognize. I figured it was probably just some deer hunter, or maybe a drunk neighbor stumbling through the woods. But the next night, it happened again. Same whistle, same time. But this time, it was closer. I'm talking like right outside my window. My heart started to race. I grabbed a flashlight, got up, and checked around the yard. But of course, nothing. No sign of anyone. No tracks. No nothing. Just the whistling, echoing deep into the woods. I figured I was just jumping at shadows. I mean, it's a small town, right? Nothing ever happens here. But the whistling kept going every night, like clockwork. Same time, same tune. I swear, it was always around 2:17 a.m., like right on the dot. It got to the point where I started thinking maybe someone was playing a sick joke on me, Maybe they knew I was alone out here and just decided to mess with me. I called the sheriff's office, and an old deputy named H came out. He'd been with the department forever. So when I told him what was going on, he got all quiet. He told me, "Your granddaddy used to call us about the same thing. Said there was someone whistling around his place every spring. We never figured it out. But I guess you're hearing it too, huh?" That shook me. My granddaddy? He'd been dead for a few years, and I had no idea he'd dealt with this. Deputy H told me to keep the doors locked, stay inside after dark, and to stop checking the yard myself. So I did. I already kept the doors locked, but now I was going extra, checking the windows, even putting chairs under the door handles. But no matter what I did, the whistling kept getting closer. One night, it was right outside the shed, louder than ever. I grabbed the flashlight and peeked through the blinds, but there was nobody out there. I didn't dare go outside. The next night, I heard it right by my front porch. 3 long, eerie whistles. Then, nothing. Silence. But it didn't stop there. The night after, the whistling came from under the house. Under the floorboards, I swear to God. It was like someone was down in the crawl space, whistling through the vents. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I spent the next day going through the attic, looking for anything that could explain what the hell was going on. That's when I found a box of my granddaddy's old journals. I flipped through them and found that he'd written about the same whistling. He said it started every spring, and that he could never figure out who it was. He'd sit up at night with his rifle, just waiting. He said it only ever happened when he lived alone after my grandma passed. I called Deputy H again. He came by, read through the journal, and looked nervous. He said, "Don't open the door unless you know who it is." That night, I sat up with a shotgun across my lap, just like my granddaddy used to do. I wasn't sleeping. at exactly 2:17 a.m., I heard it again. But this time, it wasn't outside. It was coming from the hallway, right inside the house. Step by step, the whistling was moving closer. My heart was pounding in my chest as I grabbed the shotgun. I stood up, aimed it down the hallway, and yelled, "Who's there?" The whistling stopped. I flipped the hallway light on. Nothing. Just darkness. I couldn't believe it. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. And I didn't hear the whistling for 2 nights after that. I thought maybe it was over. But on the 3rd night, I woke up to a new sound. Not whistling. Knocking. Slow, paced-out knocks. 3 of them. Coming from the back door. Then silence. My pulse was racing as I lay there, listening. A minute later, I heard footsteps. Heavy ones. Someone was walking down the hallway. The lights went out, and I grabbed my shotgun again, ready to move. When I stepped into the hallway, I saw something. A figure. Tall and dressed in black. Standing still. Just watching me. I raised the shotgun, my hands shaking. I screamed, "Don't move!" The figure didn't respond. It just stood there, frozen. I screamed again, "Stop!" Suddenly, it turned, bolted for the front door, and disappeared into the night. I fired a shot, hoping to hit something, but I was too late. The next morning, the front door was wide open. Deputy H came out again, looked around, and told me to change the locks. He said whoever that was had a key to my house. He also told me, off the record, to get out of there. He didn't want to scare me, but he said someone out there in those woods had been watching me, and my granddaddy before me. I packed up and left that day. I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever it was, whatever it was still out there, watching, waiting. And I haven't been back to Woodbridge since. My name's Jake. I'm 32, and I never thought I'd end up telling this story. Hell, I wish I could just forget it ever happened. But that's not how things work, is it? I thought moving to Rockford, Kentucky would be the fresh start I needed. After my divorce, the city life was too much. Too noisy, too crowded, too many people who knew too much about me. So, I packed my bags, rented a place on the outskirts of town, and thought the countryside would be my escape. A quiet little house on the edge of the woods with a big front porch. Secluded, peaceful. Too peaceful. At first, everything seemed perfect. The house was old, but solid. Creaky floors, tall windows, and this eerie kind of silence that felt different from the city. The kind of silence that felt almost too quiet. I spent the first week just getting the place ready, cleaning, unpacking, and fixing up the yard. I'd sit out on the porch at night with a cold beer, watching the stars. No traffic, no people, just the wind rustling through the trees. It was like a dream. But then, on the 7th night, everything changed. It started with a sound. At first, it was subtle, like the softest thud, like something landing on the porch steps. I figured it was just a raccoon, or maybe a branch falling from one of the trees. But then, it happened again the next night. And the night after that. And it wasn't the kind of sound that came from a critter. It was deliberate. Slow. Like someone was testing the steps before they climbed them. By the 4th night, I was done ignoring it. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside onto the porch. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I tried to keep cool. Nothing. Just the wind and the moonlight cutting through the trees. I thought I was just being paranoid. Maybe the isolation was getting to me. So, I chalked it up to nothing and went back inside. The thuds kept coming, but this time, they were getting closer. By night 6, I could hear them clearly. Thud. 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 Right outside the front door, I went out with my flashlight again, and this time, I saw something. A shadow moving across the porch. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Whoever it was, They weren't making any noise. They were just standing there, barely visible in the darkness. I didn't know what to do. I just stood there, too scared to move, too scared to shout. And then, just as I was about to turn back inside, the shadow moved. Fast. Too fast. In one quick motion, it disappeared around the corner of the house. My heart was racing, and I couldn't breathe. But I knew I had to check. So I grabbed the rifle I kept by the door, feeling like a damn fool for not having it with me before. I stepped outside, flashlight trembling in my hand. But there was no one there. The porch was empty. I checked the yard. Empty. I checked the woods. Silent. Nothing. But I could still feel it, like someone was watching me. The next few nights I locked up tight. Every window, every door, every shutter. I made sure everything was sealed shut. But it didn't matter. The thudding on the porch started again. Wasn't just the porch anymore, though. The thuds were coming from different parts of the house. The back door, the windows, the shed. Always slow, always deliberate. Like they were toying with me. By the 10th night, I was losing it. I hadn't slept in days. I could hear it, whatever it was, circling the house, moving in and out of the shadows. And then, right at 2 a.m., it happened. The knocking. Slow, rhythmic, 3 knocks, followed by a long pause, 3 more knocks. I jumped out of bed, heart in my throat, rifle in hand. I moved to the window, looking out into the darkness, and there it was. A figure, standing on the porch, not moving, just standing there, like it had been waiting for me. The figure was tall, draped in black, and had a hood that covered its face. I couldn't make out any details, but I could feel its eyes on me, watching. I yelled, "Who the hell are you?" No response. I stepped outside, my hands shaking, and shouted again. I said, "Who's there?" The figure didn't move, didn't speak. It just stood there, still as stone. My stomach turned, and something deep inside me told me to run. But I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring at it, waiting for something to happen. And then, just like that, it was gone. Vanished. Disappeared into thin air. I ran outside, rifle in hand, and looked around. I searched the yard, the woods, the driveway. Nothing. No sign of anyone. I checked every inch of the house, from the basement to the attic. Nothing. But as I stood in the middle of the yard, I swear I heard something. The faintest whisper in the wind. It sounded like it was saying my name. I called Sheriff Johnson again the next morning. I was shaking. I told him everything. He didn't say much at first, but when I was done, he just looked at me and said, "Jake, there's something about that place. It's not right. Folks around here have been talking about it for years. Ain't nobody lasted long out there, and I reckon you're lucky you ain't gone crazy yet." I packed up my stuff and left the next day. I didn't care about the house, the land, or anything. I just wanted out, and I never went back. I sold the house and moved out of Kentucky, never looking back. But sometimes, even now, I still hear that knocking. And when I close my eyes, I see that shadow on the porch. You want to know the worst part? I still don't know who or what it was. But one thing's for sure, it's still out there, waiting. My name's Greg. I'm 29, and I don't know how to explain this, but I swear on my life, something followed me from the woods. I used to think the things you see in movies, those creepy, unsettling things, couldn't happen to real people. But after what happened to me, I'll never be so sure again. I grew up in a small town in Missouri called Willow Creek. Not much happens there, and everyone knows everyone. The kind of place where you can leave your doors unlocked and not think twice about it. I left for college, but after I graduated, I came back to Willow Creek. It was just easier that way. The job I got was decent, and I rented a little house on the edge of town, right next to the woods. Some folks might think that's crazy, but it was cheap, and I liked the isolation. I figured I could get a lot of work done and have some quiet time to myself. But when I moved in, I didn't realize I was moving into something much darker than I could have imagined. The first few weeks were perfect. The house was cozy, the air was fresh, and I had all the peace and quiet I wanted. But on the 14th night, I woke up to something odd. It started as a sound, almost like someone whispering. Low, hollow, distant. At first I thought I was dreaming, but then it got louder. It wasn't like anything I'd ever heard before. It was a voice. But not a voice. It sounded like someone was calling out my name. Greg. I sat up in bed, wide awake. My heart was pounding in my chest. The voice, it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside my room. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, they were all vibrating with it. I jumped out of bed, flashlight in hand, and checked the house. But everything was locked up tight. The windows, the doors, everything. No sign of anyone. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up, listening to the silence. But then, just as I thought it was over, I heard it again. That hollow whisper. Louder this time. Greg, come outside. My stomach churned. I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't know what. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside onto the porch. The night air was cold, and the woods were pitch black. Not a sound from any animals, nothing but the hum of the wind. And then it came again. Greg. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. It was coming from the woods. I shined the flashlight into the darkness, but I couldn't see anything. The whisper was almost like it was in the back of my head now. My body froze, and for a moment, I almost stepped off the porch and into the woods. But something stopped me. A gut feeling. A warning. I ran back inside, bolting the door behind me. But the whispering didn't stop. It circled the house. I heard it near the back window, then the front. It was everywhere. And then, as quickly as it had started, it stopped. For the next few days, I tried to convince myself that I was just hearing things, that maybe I was exhausted from all the stress at work, but every night it came back. The whispering, the hollow voice. It wasn't until the 17th night that I finally figured out what was going on. I was sitting in the living room, my mind racing. The whispering had been going on all week, and I couldn't take it anymore. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and stood in the hallway, listening. Suddenly, I heard it. It wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a scream. A gut-wrenching, terrified scream. The voice was screaming my name, but it wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was coming from the attic. I froze. The attic. I hadn't been up there since I moved in. I thought about going up there, but every fiber of my being screamed not to. I didn't care if I was crazy, but something was telling me that I shouldn't go near that attic. But I couldn't ignore it. I had to know what was causing this. I grabbed the flashlight and climbed the stairs to the attic, my hands sweating and my heart racing. The door creaked open, and the air was thick, musty. The beam of light from my flashlight flickered as I slowly scanned the room. Then, in the far corner of the attic, I saw it. A figure, but not a person. It was tall, too tall, and its arms stretched unnaturally long, like they were too thin for its body. Its face was pale, almost translucent, and its mouth was hanging open as if it was screaming, but no sound came out. It was staring directly at me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I just stood there, frozen in fear, as it slowly started to move towards me, dragging its limbs across the floor with a sickening crack. "Greg," the voice whispered again. But this time, it wasn't coming from the thing in front of me. It was coming from the walls, the floor, the ceiling, everywhere. It was like the house itself was calling my name. I dropped the flashlight and ran. I didn't care where I was going. I just needed to get out of there. I bolted out the door, into the woods, not looking back. I don't know how long I ran. All I know is that I kept hearing it. The voice, echoing in my ears, chasing me through the trees, the whispering, the hollow scream. "Greg!" When I finally stopped, I was in the middle of nowhere, far away from the house. I couldn't go back. I couldn't even think about it. The next morning, I packed my stuff and left Willow Creek without even looking back. I've heard rumors about that house since then. They say the person who lived there before me, well, they just up and vanished one night, like they were never there. Some folks around town say it's haunted. Others say it's something worse. Me? I'm not sticking around to find out. I still hear that voice sometimes, echoing in my mind, calling my name. I don't know what it was. I don't know what that thing wanted. But I'll tell you one thing. It followed me, and I know it's still out there. My name's Emily, and I thought I'd seen it all until I moved to that damn farmhouse. I thought the country life would be peaceful. I mean, growing up in the suburbs of Pennsylvania, I'd seen my fair share of quiet woods and rolling fields, but nothing like what I found out there, at the foot of the Appalachian Mountains. I'd been working in the city for years and was burned out. The 9-to-5 grind had taken its toll, and I was in desperate need of a change. I found a little place just outside of a town called Tionesta, nestled right along the edge of the Appalachian foothills. The house wasn't much, old, creaky, and definitely seen better days. But it was cheap. So I took it, thinking it'd be the perfect escape. The peace and quiet would give me time to relax, work from home, maybe even get back into painting like I used to. The first few weeks were exactly what I'd hoped for. The air was fresh, the days long and sunny, and the nights were calm. I spent my evenings sitting on the front porch, watching the sun go down over the fields and the vast stretch of the Appalachian Mountains in the distance. It was exactly what I needed. But then, the eyes started. At first, it was just a feeling. You know the one, when you feel like someone's watching you, but when you turn around, no one's there. I chalked it up to the isolation, the wind rustling in the trees, maybe some wildlife lurking around. But it didn't stop. One night, I was sitting in the living room, just scrolling through my phone, when I caught something in the corner of my eye. 2 dark shapes. Not animal eyes, but human-shaped. I whipped my head around, but nothing was there. That's when it started for real. Every night, just before bed, I'd see those eyes again. Out of the corner of my vision, always in the same spot, by the large window that faced the front yard and the woods that spread into the Appalachian foothills. 2 dark shapes, almost like someone was standing just outside, watching me. But when I'd turn, they'd be gone. I tried to ignore it. After all, it was probably just my mind playing tricks on me after a long day. But one evening, the feeling was so strong, I couldn't just brush it off. I grabbed my flashlight and walked outside to check the yard. The porch light flickered, casting long shadows across the grass. But there was no one. The wind howled through the trees, sending shivers down my spine. The Appalachian Mountains loomed over me, their dark silhouettes standing against the night sky. For a second, I convinced myself it was all in my head. But then I saw it. There, near the edge of the trees, 2 dark figures, standing still, staring at me. I froze, my heart racing. I couldn't make out any features, just 2 silhouettes against the dark backdrop of the forest. They didn't move. They didn't blink. They just stared. I called out, "Hey, who's there?" Silence. I walked a little closer, my flashlight shaking in my hand, the beam of light cutting through the dark. But when I reached the spot where they were standing, there was no one. Nothing. Just the rustling leaves and the sounds of the Appalachian woods. I went back inside, locked all the doors and windows, and tried to forget about it. But the next night, the eyes were back, and they were closer. I stayed up late, hoping maybe I was just seeing things, but the longer I stared out the window, the more it felt like I wasn't alone. I saw them again, 2 shapes, moving this time. Slowly, deliberately, just outside the window. They were too far away for me to get a good look, but I could feel them staring at me, as if they were waiting for me to do something. Anything. That's when I heard the whisper. Low, like a voice in the wind. But I swear to God, it was coming from outside. Come out and see. My heart dropped. I grabbed my phone and called the local sheriff's department, but by the time they arrived, there was nothing. The figures were gone, not even a trace. The sheriff just shrugged and said it was probably kids messing around or some local prank. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. This wasn't just some game. Something was out there, and it was watching me. The next few days, I kept the lights on. I didn't go outside after dark, but the feeling never left. It followed me around the house, always in the shadows, always watching. And every night, the eyes were there, closer each time. I'd come to realize something. The eyes weren't just outside. They were inside too. One night, I woke up to a knock at the window. It was late, nearly 2 a.m., and I had no idea who would be out there. I got out of bed, grabbed the flashlight, and walked to the window, heart pounding. And there they were, 2 eyes, glowing faintly in the darkness, right at the window. But this time, there was no figure, no body, just the eyes, staring at me, unmoving. I screamed. I backed away, stumbling, my hand shaking as I grabbed my phone. I called the sheriff again, but by the time they got there, the eyes were gone. No footprints, no sign of anyone. That night, I packed up and left. I didn't care about the house anymore. I didn't care about the quiet, peaceful life I thought I'd have. Something about that place, something in those woods, wasn't right. When I left Tionesta, I heard rumors about that farmhouse. People said the land was cursed, that the house was built on top of something ancient, something the mountains had been hiding for centuries. They spoke about it in hushed voices, like they knew something but didn't want to say it out loud. And every so often, I get the feeling that the eyes are still out there, watching me, in the woods, in the trees, waiting for me to come back. But I don't plan on going back to that farmhouse. And if you ever find yourself in Tionesta, don't go near the woods. Don't look too closely at the windows, because once you see the eyes, they'll follow you, and they'll never stop. My name's Nick. I'm 35, and I've never been so scared in my life. I thought moving out to the country would be a peaceful change, a way to escape the chaos of the city. A friend of mine had a cabin for rent right on the edge of Elms Ridge, deep in the Appalachian foothills of West Virginia, the kind of place where you're surrounded by trees and mountains for miles, and the closest town is a solid 20-minute drive. I'd been burned out from work, and this seemed like the perfect spot to get away, to clear my head, and to start over. When I first arrived, the place was everything I thought I wanted. The cabin was small but cozy, tucked into the side of the ridge, with a porch that overlooked the vast expanse of trees and mountain slopes below. The air was fresh, the nights were quiet, and the only sounds were the wind rustling through the leaves and the occasional bird call. For the first week, everything was calm. I spent my days hiking, fishing in the nearby creek, and enjoying the solitude. But then, on the 8th night, things started to take a turn. It began as a soft sound, almost like a whisper, coming from the woods behind the cabin. I didn't think much of it at first. The wind can play tricks on you in the mountains, right? But the sound grew louder and clearer. It wasn't the wind. It was a voice. Low, muffled, and it sounded like it was calling my name. "Nick!" I froze. My heart started to race. The voice wasn't coming from inside the house, but it sounded close, too close. I stood there, staring out the window into the pitch-black woods, but I couldn't see anything. "Nick, come outside." I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out onto the porch, but there was nothing. The forest was silent, except for the sound of my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. I looked around, shining the beam of light in every direction, but the only thing I could see were the shadows of trees swaying in the breeze. I went back inside, thinking I was just imagining things. I tried to shake it off, but the voice lingered in my mind, and I couldn't sleep. The air felt colder, the shadows darker. The next night, it happened again. This time, I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy steps coming up the porch stairs. They were steady, deliberate. Someone, or something, was out there. I grabbed the shotgun I'd kept in the cabin for protection and went outside. But once again, nothing. Just the dark wilderness stretching out in front of me. I stayed up all night that night, watching, waiting, but nothing came. The footsteps stopped. The whispering stopped. And for the next few days, I convinced myself it was just the mountain air playing tricks on me. Maybe it was an animal, or maybe my mind was just messing with me after being so isolated for so long. But then came the third night. It started just after midnight, right as the clock struck 12. I was lying in bed when I heard it again. The whisper. But this time it was louder, clearer, and it was coming from inside the cabin. "Nick!" I bolted upright in bed, my breath caught in my throat. The voice was coming from the hallway. Slowly, almost like it was dragging itself closer to me. I heard the soft shuffling of footsteps, like something, or someone, was moving through the house. My mind raced. Was it a person? A neighbor? Or was it something else? I grabbed the flashlight and slowly crept into the hallway. The house was dark, eerily still. I shone the light down the hall, but there was nothing. No one. The silence felt suffocating. I turned and checked each room, but every room was empty. That's when I heard it. The sound wasn't coming from inside the house anymore. It was coming from the forest. The whispering had turned into a chant, repeated over and over again like a prayer. It was calling my name, and it was louder now, almost as if the voice was right outside my door. "Nick, come outside." I felt paralyzed with fear, my body frozen in place. I knew something was out there, something that was trying to lure me into the woods, but I didn't want to go. I didn't want to be drawn out there into the darkness. But the voice kept calling, and I couldn't stop myself. I opened the front door and stepped out onto the porch, flashlight in hand, my hands shaking. I looked out into the woods, the beam of light flickering in the darkness. The trees were still, but I knew something was watching me. I could feel it. My breath quickened, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And then, I saw it. A figure standing at the edge of the trees. Tall, thin. The shape was barely visible in the dark, but I could make out the outline of a man. Or something like a man. It wasn't moving. It was just standing there, staring at me. My heart slammed in my chest. I raised the flashlight, but the light flickered and went out. I stumbled back, and when I turned to run inside, I heard the voice again. But this time, it was right behind me. "Nick." I didn't look back. I ran. I ran into the cabin, bolted the door, and grabbed the shotgun. My mind was racing, but nothing made sense. Who was that person? Or whatever it was? And why was it out there, in the woods? The next morning, I left. I didn't care about the house anymore. I packed my bags, locked up, and drove out of there without looking back. To this day, I don't know what happened that night, but I heard from the locals in Tionesta that Elms Ridge has always been a place of mystery. They say strange things happen in those woods. People have gone missing over the years, and some folks claim to have heard voices calling their names, just like I did. I haven't been back to Elms Ridge since, and I don't plan on going back. But sometimes, when I'm alone in the city, I still hear the whispering. It haunts me. And I'll tell you this. If you ever find yourself near the Appalachian foothills, and you hear a voice calling your name from the trees, don't go outside, because whatever's out there, it's not human, and it will follow you. My name is Kate. I'm 31, and I'm telling you this because I can't shake the feeling that someone, or something, is still watching me. I'm not sure if it's the memories, the guilt, or something supernatural. But after what happened to me in Cedar Creek, I can't seem to find peace. It all started when I moved into the small town of Cedar Creek in North Carolina. The town is tucked away in the heart of the Smoky Mountains, a place that looked like it was straight out of a postcard. Lush forests, rolling hills, and the kind of quiet that only small towns can offer. I was looking for a fresh start after my fiancé, Derek, and I broke off our engagement. We had been together for years, but after the miscarriage, something changed in both of us. I couldn't shake the sadness, and it became too much for us to carry together. So, I moved, hoping the change would bring healing. I found a small, affordable house on the outskirts of town, an old farmhouse with a wide porch and a beautiful view of the mountains. It had been empty for years, and the land around it was thick with overgrown grass and trees. But there was something oddly comforting about it. It felt like it could be a place for me to finally heal. The first few days were peaceful. I unpacked my boxes, explored the town, and spent quiet evenings on the porch. But then, it started. It began with sounds. Soft, subtle noises in the middle of the night. The kind of sounds you could easily dismiss as the house settling. Creaks, groans, things shifting. But over time, they grew louder. One night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps upstairs, where no one else should have been. I rushed up to check, heart racing, only to find nothing. The house was empty, as it should have been. I thought I was just imagining things, maybe my mind playing tricks. But then the shadows started. I'd see them in the corner of my eye, fleeting, like something moving just beyond the edge of my vision. I'd turn to look, but there was nothing there. And the feeling that I wasn't alone, that never left. One evening, I decided to take a walk through the woods behind the house. I needed to clear my head. The trees were dense, casting long shadows as the sun began to set. It was beautiful, but unsettling. I kept hearing what sounded like whispers, faint and far off, like voices floating in the breeze. I tried to tell myself it was just the wind, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was out there with me. Then, I saw it. At the edge of the woods, there was a figure. A man, or at least, it looked like one. Tall, thin, and completely still. His clothes were dark, his face hidden in shadow. My breath caught in my throat and I froze, staring at him. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. The figure didn't move either. It just stood there, staring at me, almost as if it was waiting for me to do something. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned and ran back to the house, my heart pounding in my chest. But when I looked back, there was no one there. The figure was gone. That night, I locked every door and window. But the whispers didn't stop. In fact, they got worse. For the next week, I barely slept. The sounds became more distinct. Footsteps, whispers, even faint laughter, all in the dead of night. I called the local sheriff, but when he came by, there was nothing unusual. He told me I was probably just adjusting to life in the countryside, but I knew it was more than that. I felt it. Someone, or something, was in that house with me. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to confront whatever was haunting me. I stayed up all night, watching, listening. At exactly 3 a.m., I heard it, the sound of a soft knock on the front door. I jumped, my breath coming out in shaky gasps. The knock came again, followed by a whisper, clear as day. Kate. I grabbed a flashlight and opened the door, my heart racing. But when I looked outside, there was no one there. Only the dark forest stretching into the night. I walked out into the yard, holding the flashlight out in front of me. The whispers were louder now. The shadows in the trees seemed to move, almost like they were alive. I turned in a circle, shining the light everywhere, but saw nothing. That's when I heard it. A voice, but not from the air. It was coming from inside the well in the corner of the yard, the one that had been covered over with boards. My heart stopped. "Kate," the voice said again, this time softer, more pleading. "Help me." I grabbed the boards and pulled them away, my hands trembling. What I saw down there still haunts me to this day. It was a woman, her eyes wide and terrified, her hands reaching up towards me from the darkness. I screamed and ran back into the house, slamming the door shut behind me. My breath was ragged as I tried to make sense of what I'd just seen. I didn't know if I was losing my mind or if something truly horrifying was going on. The next morning, I went to town and spoke to an elderly woman at the local store. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and fear when I told her about the woman in the well. "You don't know, do you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "The farmhouse has been abandoned for years. But before that, the woman who lived there, her name was Clara. Her husband and child disappeared one night, and she was never the same. They say she went mad, hearing voices in the night. She was the one who was found dead in that well. I couldn't breathe. It was Clara's voice I had heard. Clara's spirit calling to me. The same voice that had been haunting the house. I stayed in that house one more night. That night, the whispering stopped. The footsteps, the shadows, they were gone. But I knew, deep in my heart, that it wasn't because whatever was haunting me had left. It was because Clara's spirit had found peace. I left Cedar Creek the next morning. I couldn't stay there anymore. But to this day, I carry a part of her with me. I don't know if it's guilt or sorrow, but I can't shake the feeling that, in some way, I was meant to help her find peace. She called to me, and I heard her. And now, I can't help but wonder if she ever really left the well, or if she's still there, waiting for someone to hear her again. My name is Lily. I'm 26, and I never thought I would be the one telling this story. I never believed in ghosts, spirits, or anything like that. But after what happened to me in that old house on the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina, I'm not so sure anymore. I had just gone through a difficult breakup, and I needed a change. The city was suffocating me, and I wanted to find somewhere quieter, more peaceful. I found a small house for rent, far from the noise and chaos, nestled in the woods just outside of Asheville. The house was old, but full of character, with overgrown gardens and thick trees surrounding it. The landlord mentioned it had been empty for years, but I didn't think much of it. It was the perfect place for me to start over. The first few days were calm, peaceful even. I spent my time unpacking and exploring the area. The house had this charm about it. Creaky floors, dusty old furniture, but a sense of warmth too. But then, the whispers started. At first it was subtle, soft, almost imperceptible sounds. I thought it was just the house settling. But over time, the whispers grew louder. It wasn't the wind. It was a voice. A woman's voice. Faint, but unmistakable. Lily. I shook it off at first, telling myself it was just my imagination. But the whispers didn't stop. Every night, it grew louder. I would lie in bed, wide awake, listening to that voice calling my name. Sometimes, I would hear footsteps in the hallway, but when I checked, there was no one there. One night, it got worse. I had gone upstairs to get some boxes from the attic when I felt it, the heavy, oppressive air. The moment I stepped into the attic, I found something strange, an old chest, covered in dust. I almost didn't open it, but I was drawn to it. Inside, I found a stack of letters tied with a faded ribbon. The letters were from the 1920s, addressed to someone named Margaret Grayson. The last one was written by a man named William. The letter was full of longing and regret, but the last few lines made my heart stop. I'm sorry, Margaret. I never meant to leave you like this. Please forgive me. I will always love you. The name Margaret Grayson struck something in me. It wasn't just the letter. It was the fact that the name sounded so familiar, so unsettlingly close to the whispers I had been hearing. It was then I realized the house had once belonged to her. The next day, I went into town to ask the locals about her. An elderly woman at the local shop told me Margaret's story. She had been a beautiful young woman, engaged to William. But one day, he disappeared, and Margaret was left alone. Heartbroken. They say she went mad after he left. The locals said she spent the rest of her days wandering the house, calling out his name, until she was found dead in the well in the yard. The voice in the house, I realized, was Margaret. She had been calling for me, trusting me to help her. I was the one who had heard her and uncovered her story. In some twisted way, she was reaching out to me, asking for help. I felt a connection to her. I believed I could help her find peace. That night, I sat in the living room, speaking aloud to the empty house. "Margaret," I whispered, "I hear you. I know what happened. You're not alone anymore." I thought that was it. I thought Margaret's spirit would rest easy, now that she had someone who believed her. I was wrong. It started with a coldness in the room. The temperature dropped so suddenly, I could see my breath in front of me. I felt her presence in the air, heavy and cold. I thought she was finally at peace. But then, everything changed. A soft, gentle whisper echoed in my ear. "You should have left." I turned around, but no one was there. The house was silent again, but the air felt thick, suffocating. And then, the footsteps returned. But this time, they were different. They were coming closer, faster. I looked toward the stairs and saw a shadow, a figure, a woman in a long, tattered white dress, standing at the top of the stairs. Her face was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were wide, empty. She was staring at me, her mouth twisted into a smile that didn't feel like a smile. "Margaret," I whispered, my voice trembling. She stepped forward, her feet making no sound on the wooden floor. And then the whisper came again. But this time, it was harsh, filled with malice. "You shouldn't have come. You shouldn't have listened." Before I could react, the lights flickered, and the temperature plummeted again. I was frozen, unable to move. The shadow of Margaret moved closer, and her figure grew darker, more distorted, until she wasn't just standing there. She was lunging toward me. My heart pounded in my chest as she reached out, her fingers long and skeletal, grasping for me. I could feel her coldness, the icy chill of death as her hand grabbed my arm. I screamed, trying to pull away, but her grip was too strong. The last thing I saw before the darkness consumed me was her face, twisted, contorted, filled with rage. "You were supposed to help me," she hissed. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the floor, gasping for air. The house was silent. The temperature had returned to normal, but I was covered in sweat, my heart racing. I looked around, and she was gone. I don't know how much time passed before I managed to stand up. My body was shaking, my mind racing. I ran out of that house, and I didn't stop until I reached the car. I left Asheville that night, driving without a destination, just trying to escape the suffocating fear that clung to me. I never went back to that house. I don't know what happened to Margaret. I don't know if her spirit ever found peace, or if it's still there, waiting for the next person to come and listen to her. But one thing I do know, sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still hear her voice, that angry, vengeful whisper, and I can't shake the feeling that I'm not the one who was meant to help her. She was the one who needed to help me.